Hey, welcome to 209coach.com. I want to do a video for you today here of Mia Davidson, one of the all-time home run leaders in college softball. Has tremendous mechanics, and it's not by chance that she hits so many home runs. She does a lot of things that you see with the best players in the MLB, the best players in NCAA softball. And one of the reasons I have this channel here is to help parents, to help coaches, help players to notice what the best players in the world do. Because if you're not doing what the best players are doing, there's a very good chance that you're doing something wrong, okay? There's very common things that players do, many absolutes that players do in MLB and top elite college players, okay? And I'm trying to show you this so that you can apply this to your swing. Now, watch what's going on here. The first thing I want to show you is, you can see here, and I talk about this in my videos all the time, everything starts with a good setup. If you do not have a good setup, it's going to be a domino effect of getting caught up. Now, you can see here that her hands are between her neck and her deltoid. Her bat is pretty vertical. This is what you see with the best players in the world. You're always going to see players that are going to have a lot of flexion in their arms. Sometimes what you see with players, you're going to see that their hands might be a little higher. Okay, that's fine. Sometimes you see players, how you see here with Mia. Sometimes you see players that have their hands lower. Okay, that doesn't matter. That's just style. But the point is, you don't want to have your hands way out here. Okay, when you start doing this, a lot of times what happens with players, they end up getting into the gather. Now their hands end up way over here, where if you draw a line going down, their hands are going to be way beyond their back foot, therefore adding extra frames, extra movement, and this is very common. Very common, and you don't want to do this in your swing. So I'm going to show you how to eliminate that move in your swing, okay? Now watch what's going on here with her swing. As she gets into her gather, her hips, her tailbone's going to start rotating immediately, okay? Pay attention to her back hip. You're going to see that it's never going to go beyond where it is right now. Her tailbone's going to start to rotate. As it starts to rotate, her hands go from being vertical. In other words, the top hand right now, the palm is facing towards the pitcher. As her hip starts to rotate, she starts to pull back with her top hand. And as she starts to pull back, watch her back elbow work up, back, and behind her as she gets into her toe touch. And now watch her top hand. Watch how her top hand now is kind of facing downward. Okay, this is what you want in your swing as you get into your gather. You want the palm to be facing downward. Now, one of the things, like I mentioned, that's a lot of times with players is their hands will get into an overload. And you do not want to do this in your swing. And the way to avoid that is this. Let me show you what I do with my students when I'm working with them. When they have a problem of having too much movement going back. In other words, lateral movement working towards the catcher. What I do is I pretend like there's a wall right here. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a line right here and just say this is a wall. And this is what you kind of want to do with your students. And if you're working with someone, you want to have this kind of an imaginary wall. What I do is I go from the shoelaces, and what I do from there, I put my palm, just say this little square right here is my palm right here. And when they start to go back, if they start to go too far back, they're going to hit my palm. Now, right here with Mia, she doesn't do this at all. She does it beautifully, where she gets to the apex of the gather. Her hands reach right there perfectly, right where her shoelaces are, what you see in the best players in the world. Now notice her back elbow at the apex of the gather, at this stage of the swing right here, where you're going to notice with the best players in the world that their elbow right here, there's still not much pullback going on. In other words, there's still a lot of flexion in that back arm, and there's still flexion in the lead arm as she starts to get into the gather, and her bat is still somewhat vertical. Okay, this is what you want to have at the apex of the gather. Now, like I was mentioning earlier, when you want to, what you want to do with your students, they get into overload, they get into too much lateral movement going back towards the catcher. Again, what I do is I put my palm right about right here, in this area right here. So with players that start to go too far back, as soon as they hit my hand, they know it's time to start going forward. Now, Many players are not trained to go forward, so what I tell them is it's crucial that you start to rotate your hips towards the pitcher, okay? Start to rotate your hips, your tailbone towards the pitcher immediately as you lift your front leg. And as you lift your front leg, simultaneously, you want to apply the pullback where your top hand is pulling back. It's not an abrupt move, but the tailbone rotation, the pullback is not an abrupt move. It's a very smooth technique with very smooth tempo. But immediately you want to rotate your back hip. You want to let your palm go working downward as you're pulling back. Again, watch what's going on. Watch what's going on with her back elbow. And this is what I was just mentioning to you earlier, that you can see here that there's still a lot of flexion in her arm as she starts to get into her gather. Right here, she's at the apex of the gather pretty much right here. Look at her back elbow still down, but now as she gets more into her forward move with her tailbone rotating towards the pitcher, as she starts to apply the pullback, watch her back elbow, how it works up, back, and behind her. This has given her tremendous power. This is one of the reasons she's one of the most all-time home run hitters. There's a reason for it, because she's applying tremendous torque, tremendous pullback right here, and she maintains the pullback. And by maintaining the pullback, I mean this. Watch out where her hands are. Her hands are back, okay, where they are right now. Pay attention to her hands. As she starts to move forward, her hands are still back. Her hands are still back. Still back, still back, okay? In other words, she's not carrying her hands with her. The way you keep your hands back like this is by applying that top hand pullback. You want to make sure you're rotating your hips clockwise towards the pitcher if you're a right-hander, counterclockwise if you're a left-hander. As you start going towards the pitcher, your hips are rotating. At the same time, you want to apply that top hand pullback very smoothly. And in order to keep your hands back, you want to make sure you keep applying the pullback. Keep applying it, just like she's doing right here. Now, again, you want to make sure when they're doing this, again, you want to put your hand right by the shoelaces, and if they hit your hand, what I would highly recommend for you to tell them is you need to stop right here. You need to rotate your hips more towards the pitcher. You need to start getting that top hand to work up, back, and behind you while your hands are still back by your shoelace area, okay? Now, at the apex of the gather, your hands are going to be in front of your shoe because there's no pullback yet, okay? There's not a lot of pullback. That what causes the hands to go at the apex of the gather from in front of the shoe to the shoelace is that pullback, which is causing that back elbow to work behind the hands. Watch how that top hand works, starts to point downward, has her hands stay back. And again, this is going to give you an opportunity to have beautiful sequence and the beginning of having a powerful swing. Now, please give me a like if you enjoyed this video. If you want to see the continuation of what happens after this move, just watch my videos. I get into great detail in many of my videos of the sequence of the full swing, but this is specifically to help you, to help your student, your child, not to get into an overload, not to add too many extra frames to her swing or his swing. This is a great drill to start training, but again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Smooth tempo. I cannot emphasize how important smooth tempo is, so please apply smooth tempo to help you, help your child, help whoever you're working with to start to develop an elite swing. Again, give me a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.